All right, James. Had a good chat with David Tao from BarBend. What did you think? Good
Yeah,
referral, man. Good shout.
no,
Getting him
he's
on.
a good dude, and obviously for people who don't know, I guess maybe the fitness industry area of SEO and online digital marketing, Barbie is probably one of the bigger or biggest fitness sites there is out there, covering mainly strength sports. But I mean that if you search any affiliate best term within fitness or some kind of fitness term, you'll find Barbend within the top three somewhere. So yeah, they're absolutely crushing it. They cover all the news, but podcasts, newsletters, all sorts of stuff. And obviously, David exited earlier this year, so we dive into some of those specifics. And man, yeah, that site just absolutely crushes. It's insane.
Yeah, it does. And I think I asked way too many questions with David. I think I was like
No,
prodding a
it's a
bit. What do you
podcast.
think?
No, you're supposed
Yeah.
to ask questions. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, he was like saying, I can't mention this. I feel kind of bad, you know. I'm always that guy who crosses the line.
Comes with
Hopefully,
the
I mean,
territory.
yeah, it seemed like he enjoyed chatting, so I'm sure it's fine. But
Yeah,
guys, it's a good episode. Give it a listen, like, subscribe, so on and so forth, and comment. That's the
yeah, boost
pod.
our numbers.
Yeah, boost our numbers. It's popping now. It's popping. I think we've been growing nicely. So guys, go give it a listen and let us know. What's good, everyone? It's Jackie Chow,
And this is James DeLacy.
and you're listening to This Week in Digital Marketing.
All right, I'm doing the intro again. So, welcome to This Week in Digital Marketing. We have myself, James DeLacy, my co host, Jackie Chow, and a very special guest today, a direct competitor of mine. Perfect to have on the podcast, David Tao. Welcome, David.
Thanks so much for having me, James. I know we're competitors, but we're frenemies. Let's put it that way.
Frenemies. Yeah, no, exactly. That's a good way to put it. And obviously, I'll extract as much information as possible for my own side. Of course, that's how we do it here. But for anyone who wants to know who you are, David, what you've been doing, your big exit, and everything else, do you want to maybe just dive into a little bit of your background and your site?
Sure. My name's David Thomas Tao. I put the Thomas in there because there are a lot of David Taos in the world, super common name, so that's why I put that middle name in there. Not because I think it's amazing, but I was born and raised in Kentucky and live in New York City now. Moved here after college, started working as a journalist. That was actually my first job, so I wrote for publications like Fortune and Forbes, and that was at a time when print media was kind of moving into the digital space and no one really knew what was going on. So I kind of saw the collapse of a lot of print media and realized I wanted to get involved in producing digital content. Was also really passionate about fitness. I was a competitive weightlifter for a number of years, a very bad one, but I was one. I was a CrossFitter. I co-owned a CrossFit gym. Actually did some content work and writing for CrossFit HQ way back in the day. Seems like a lifetime ago. And the opportunity came up in early 2016. I kind of had a bit of a career shift, a bit of an inflection point where I was doing a lot of content consulting, traveling around a lot, and thought I kind of wanted to reestablish roots in New York, take some time, maybe start my own thing. Had some business partners at the time I was really excited about starting something with. And I said, hey, why don't we try and combine my passion for strength training and fitness with a new content site built around that? Because there really wasn't kind of a mainstream site for people who liked strength, right? So there were very specific sites. There were sites for trainers. There were forums for specific sports. But I was like, let's put that all under one banner and maybe try and build the site to where everyone who likes lifting weights can come and they can get some real value out of it. So we started BarBend in early 2016. Our timing was excellent in a lot of ways. It was terrible in a lot of ways. We were able to kind of ride this wave of strength becoming a little bit more mainstream. James, that's something I actually talked with your wife a little bit about on the BarBend podcast, which is kind of fun. A lot of that was due to the growth of CrossFit, the proliferation of CrossFit. People just got more interested in powerlifting, weightlifting, CrossFit, strongman, bodybuilding, you name it, over those years. We were able to ride that wave. We were able to raise a little bit of funding, grow a team, and really by the time we exited, which was in spring of this year, spring of 2023, we were the biggest independent fitness publisher in the world, to my knowledge. So we had about 31 million, 32 million readers in 2022. We're on pace for a lot more this year. And, we're kind of coming up against some of the big boys and girls. So, our competitors are kind of now the Men's Health of the world and places like that. And I think it's a testament to the fact that people know that strength training can be part of a healthy lifestyle. A lot more people are interested in it. When we started, we were really focused on like the super nerds, people who wanted results from the CrossFit Games and the Olympics and who were really competitive about that stuff. And now we write content for those people, but also for anyone who's just looking to pick up a barbell and feel a little better because of it. So that's the elevator pitch. That wasn't so much an elevator pitch. It was a little longer.
Nice. Do you mind if we dive a bit more deeper into it? You mentioned
Please.
you raised some money in the beginning. Well, could you like walk us through the thought process behind that? And just to give you a sense, like our audience are primarily like new site owners, people in SEO, digital marketers, so on and so forth. So a lot of them are probably like the indie hacker types, the hustlers. They probably never raised funding, nor would they ever. Maybe you could provide the other side of it, the other side of the argument here.
Totally. And I think it's a really good perspective because that is very much the ethos we brought to BarBend and we still bring to BarBend in many ways. My co-founders and I have content and SEO backgrounds. We're basically completely organic. We grew based on SEO. So that is our background, and those were the principles we built the company on. And we thought we could potentially bootstrap that early on. What we realized is that we gained traction quicker than we thought, and that our bottleneck was scaling content production. Our bottleneck was not the SEO principles. Our bottleneck was not having enough to write on. When we started BarBend, we weren't sure there was enough content to produce. We realized quickly that wasn't the case, and we just needed to produce more. And we needed money for that. We needed to hire writers and editors and full-time editorial staff. For the first few months of BarBend, I was basically the only one producing content. I was writing upwards of 30 or 35 articles a week. It wasn't sustainable and it wasn't scalable. I couldn't just double myself. And the more content we wrote, the more traffic we got, the quicker the site grew. So we raised a round of funding in late 2016, early 2017, which allowed us to hire some full-time staff. We started by approaching venture capitalists because a lot of VCs were investing in content at the time. They were throwing money into BuzzFeed. They were throwing money into Elite Daily. This was before Mike.com went under. I think Vice had just gone public or was about to and had this big multi-billion-dollar valuation. And so we thought there was money there. We got rejected by every venture capitalist we approached. Spoiler alert. I think there were about 24. I mean, some really awful meetings because they just thought our market was too small and they thought there was no scale. We were focused on how we could build revenue. They were like, no, just build your audience as big as possible. Worry about revenue later on. So we had to raise a friends and family round, a seed round of about $800,000. And we were very lucky to be able to raise that because I was approaching people I knew from college. My co-founders were approaching their in-laws. Like we were just trying to scrape together what we could. We put our own money into it as well. I don't want to forget that. We got very lucky that we weren't able to raise venture capital because the sites that did raise venture capital during that time did not end up doing so well because I think they were pushed to scale in a way that was not sustainable and where revenue could not support profitability. Whereas we had to scrape together a seed round from individuals and angels. We knew that more money probably wasn't coming. So we had to focus on revenue and profitability early on. And I think, honestly, it ended up being the best thing for us. And we got very lucky because of that. So we were able to raise money. I think a lot of your listeners might not consider that. We were able to raise money, but then we immediately said, okay, we can't approach this like a venture-backed company because the money will run out. There aren't these like deep pockets that we can reach into for more scale. We have to focus on revenue. We have to focus on profitability, or at least we have to like have a game plan for that. It might not happen immediately, but we have to see the path toward that.
Gotcha. That's cool, man. So of the 800K, I'm guessing like how far down the line did you raise that 800K? Like, do you remember like the numbers you were doing at the time? Or
yeah, not off. I gotta say, not off the top of my head. I should have come prepared for that. So we were raising in late 2016, early 2017. I think we finalized
Mm-hmm.
around in like early spring 2017. In So between March of 2016 when we launched and March of 2017, so that first year, that first 12 months, we had 1.4 million readers, which might seem like a lot, but it grew very slowly and it grew organically, right? So a lot of that came in early 2017 after we've been operational for about 9 months, call it.
Mm-hmm.
So the numbers weren't terribly impressive. What did give us a lot of hope was that our numbers when we would write news around events, so the CrossFit Games, the Olympics, World's Strongest Man, these kind of hallmark events during the strength sports calendar, those numbers were really promising. We'd see like a big spike, and we're like, oh, we could get 100,000 readers a day. A day. We see the path toward that. Um, and so that was important for us in the fundraise to say like, oh, our news content, which is really what we were doubling down on at the time, is performing really well. We see the path to get deeper and broader as we have more editorial capacity.
Gotcha. And how are you getting these like news traffic? Was it through Google News? Were you posting it elsewhere?
Yeah,
Because it needs like some sort of virality
totally.
effect, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were getting it through Google News was really big for us, so getting picked up by Google News. And then also Facebook instant articles were providing a lot of traffic at the time. I think those were also the early days of Apple News. We were getting some traffic from that as well. Um, and I just want to point out that I think what we did well early on is that we were very consistently publishing. We were publishing quickly and we were publishing at a very high quality. I noticed that by the time the Olympics in 2016 rolled around, the Rio Olympics, so this was 4 months, 5 months after we published our first article, we were getting linked to in the Wikipedia page for weightlifting results at the Olympics. So we
Hmm.
were getting these amazing, high authority links and getting linked as a primary source within a few months because the editors who were working on those pieces for Wikipedia saw our content as high quality and knew they could come to BarBend after every weightlifting session ended at the Olympics and get the results quicker than they could get them on NBC's site or on
Mm-hmm.
Olympics.org. Because we were watching the events live, we were reporting on them. When the Tokyo Olympics happened in 2021, we had writers and editors on Tokyo time. So even though most of them were in the US, they were, 12 hours ahead. So they were writing and working at night and sleeping during the day. And so for us, it's always been important that news is published consistently, accurately, and in a timely fashion so people know they can come to BarBend for those results. And that pays dividends when it comes to getting links, that pays dividends when it comes to getting social traffic and kind of getting this boost of traffic at the very beginning, which then as a lot of folks know, feeds into performance in Google, whether it's Google News or the main feed.
Do you think there's sports now that could be tapped the same way that you tapped into strength sports back in that day?
Yeah, I do. I don't pretend to know exactly what those are. Like, I'm not one of those people who can say I'm going to predict the next MMA or the next UFC. I think I've been talking to folks who kind of rode that wave, which was even before this kind of strength sports wave.
Mm,
I definitely think those exist. Um, I I think I look at the world of pickleball, and I'm
yeah,
not
that's
really
going
into
big.
it. But the people I see who are into it, like they started playing, and now they're into like following the news on it. They have professional pro pickleball players they love following. Like that's something that I also wouldn't have predicted, but I think it's another example of something that in the past probably 2 years, really like kind of post COVID, has just blown up and in
Mm.
popularity, which means there's a content ecosystem that can be built around it and is being built around it. So that's one example. The answer is yes. Um, I do think my hope is that people get more interested in sports they can participate in and not necessarily at a high level. Like American football is a really good example. That is a sport some people do when they're young and that has a massive fan base in the United States, right? But like, I don't go do it and I really can't go do it right now, nor would I really want to. There's such a high barrier to entry to actually playing that sport. You need teams. It's high. extraordinarily high impact. It's dangerous sometimes. Like there are all
Hmm.
these barriers to entry. Whereas something like weightlifting, okay, I'll never compete at the Olympics, but I can practice the snatch and clean and jerk at just about any gym around me, right? So these participatory fan bases, I think, are really cool because it gets more people active. Those get more people active. So sports that might be a little more smaller, a little more niche, but have potentially participatory fan bases, I love those, and I love that they're growing because I think it shows more of an appreciation and growth of physical culture, at least in the United States.
Hmm. Yeah. No, that's a good shout. I think the emergence of pickleball is going to be pretty big. I guess quickly, now that you've exited BarBend, I know you're still working with the buyers, right? And you're still working in the
Mm-hmm.
company. What's
Yep.
next for you? I know you have like a lot of different interests. I see some bourbon in the back. Is that your next industry that you're going to tap into, or what are you thinking?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm still with BarBend. I do want to clarify, and this is I think important for your listenership and your viewers who might be interested in exiting companies. I'm with BarBend because I want to be. There's no earnout. I'm not required to be with BarBend, but we found a role for me that I'm really enjoying, and Pillar Four is a great company, and I was really excited to work for them. And I hope, fingers crossed, they're excited to have me. So my role is very different. Obviously, it was a big transition phase. There was a multi-month
Mm-hmm.
transition phase as we got integrated to Pillar Four. But I really like that, and it's still gets me out of bed in the morning. I think BarBend is going to be the biggest and best in the space. Like I don't think we've reached our potential yet, so I love being along for that journey still. As far as other interests, I've been doing a lot of stuff in the whiskey and spirit space for a long time. I just haven't been that public about it since until recently. So I do reviews. I just finished up a national tasting panel a couple weeks ago. I do some consulting, investing in that space. I do a lot of work in that space. I was born and raised in Kentucky, so it's kind of in my blood, so to speak. I grew up around the
Mm-hmm.
industry, and I would say I'm hoping to do more in that as I have a little bit more free time. I want to do more reviews. I want to do more tasting panels. I want to do more media and content in the spirit space. I think it's a lot of fun. It's not the day job, I want to clarify, and I do appreciate that because I think having some checks and balances as to how much I enjoy that space and as to how much I imbibe, it is a bit of a balance, right? Working in the fitness space, but also the alcohol space. The two don't always mix so well. So if I was doing booze stuff every single day, that could be a little bit of a problem. And so, don't get high on your own supply, so to speak. But I really love that space. I love talking about it. I love getting into the personal stories behind it. And obviously, I have that personal connection growing up so close to it and around it. So thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. And sorry, back to BarBend. We're jumping all over here, but you're a co-founder, right? So there's a couple
Yeah.
founders, and
Yeah. Yeah.
how many co-founders do you have?
So I have two co founders in BarBend.
Nice, nice. And I'm guessing when you guys exited, what was the terms like? Was it just like cash up front? Because you mentioned you chose to be there, so there's no earn out. I'm guessing you just got a lump sum. Everyone got paid out, including your co-founders, plus everyone in the seed round, who I guess are extremely happy.
I can't
Why?
actually,
Yeah.
what I will say is I can't actually comment on specifics there. So I can neither confirm nor deny specifics of the deal. But what I will say, and I wrote about this in a Medium post, um, so this is
Hmm.
not me being shifty. It's
No,
just
it's cool.
I can neither confirm nor deny that. But what I will clarify is that everyone was really thrilled. Our investors, especially, I got a lot of extraordinarily happy calls. There were some happy tears, and I was really, as CEO of BarBend, as co-founder and CEO, I was no longer CEO, obviously, but I was personally it was kind of storybook for me. I don't think I could have imagined something that worked out better for everyone
Hmm.
involved, and that's our investors, our founders, and our employees. which I think is really, really important. Pillar 4 brought on every full-time employee, and then we actually started hiring new employees because we had more resources to do so. That was really important to me because I didn't want the company to be scrapped for parts. I didn't want the team to be, wound down. So finding a home for all of the people, because we had 18 full-time employees when we sold, for these people who entrusted their careers to us and to me as CEO, that was really important to me.
One thing I did want to know as well, with Pillar 4, because they're obviously their own, I mean, you search anything, you see basically the top 3 spots of Pillar 4 sites. But how do you and Pillar 4 deal with, for example, maybe you rank number 2 for a search term, but the other site is number 1? Are you putting resources to try become number 1, even though it's the same company? Does that matter?
Pillar 4 has cage fights, and what happens is, no, I'm kidding. I'm absolutely joking. They take the head of each site and you duke it out for the number 1 spot. No, I'm absolutely joking. Pillar 4 is a really cool company, and in that, partially, I think, because each brand, everyone kind of like they've asked this question before. They're like, "Oh, did you all just get like the BarBend team? Like, no one works for BarBend anymore." It's like, actually, no. The BarBend team is still the BarBend team, right? Each site has its own editorial team, voice, systems. They're all owned by Pillar 4. There are some support staff across them, like HR, like supports people across. There's Pillar 4 HR. There's not like BarBend HR. Just as one example, right? But the teams are all separate and kind of have their own vibes, have their own processes. Obviously, there's some shared organizational knowledge and support. Like, that's really important. But BarBend still operates as BarBend. And in fact, one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is BarBend, we also own now Pillar 4 owns it, Breaking Muscle. So we acquired Breaking Muscle in 2021. Breaking Muscle has its own team, and Pillar 4 has actually invested resources into growing the Breaking Muscle team somewhat independently of the BarBend team. So these Pillar 4 properties are all still run kind of in their own ways and very much independently. And even though there's some overlap in the spaces they're in, the target audiences and the readerships are actually quite different sometimes. For example, Breaking Muscle is much more focused on the personal trainer community, not wholly, but is more focused on the personal trainer community than BarBend is, as one example. So the editorial structures and teams are a little bit different because of that.
Gotcha. Could you talk about like the monetization of BarBend? Do you know
Sure.
what percentage is affiliate, what percentage is display, what percentage is maybe sponsorships and partnerships?
Sure. So I do know those breakdowns. I can't share the exact percentages, but I can talk about the ways revenue comes in, so to speak. So the one that is most obvious, that is important and consistent, and I think is still very much relevant to all organic sites and content producers like BarBend, is display advertising. Right. Display advertising ebbs and flows. There have been golden periods. There have been not so great periods for it. I don't know what we're in right now, but it's still extraordinarily important to BarBend. So programmatic display advertising, especially when you're getting as much traffic as BarBend is, vitally important. So that's thing number one. Direct sponsorship, sponsored content, something that we've been investing a lot of time, energy, and resources into growing. We actually have an independent team for that now that works directly with advertisers for advertorial content. That's on-site advertorial content. That's event sponsorships, newsletter sponsorships. BarBend has 2 pretty large newsletters. One that is the BarBend newsletter, and one that's Ripped Report. That's more bodybuilding specific. So sponsored advertising and direct placements in those newsletters are very important for us. Podcast advertising, we don't really do a ton of podcast advertising, but people still reach out to us. We'll still work with them on it. We don't push it too hard, but it is relevant. And then affiliate monetization is also relevant to what we do. So we have a great team that focuses on that in product relevant content. So there are kind of 3 or 4 main revenue sources, and then we have a decent decent footprint on YouTube. I think we're going to be focusing a lot more on that as we grow the team later this
Mm-hmm.
year. That does create significant revenue for brands, depending on your niche, right? You don't need to be Mr. Beast size. You don't need 20 million subscribers to make a significant amount of money on YouTube, right? If you're, depending on your niche, you can produce appreciable revenue with much smaller subscriber counts. So that's something that's important for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all that traffic on BarBend, how does your programmatic this display ads work? Do you have your own Google AdX account, or do you work through something like Mediavine or AdThrive?
Yeah, we work through Mediavine. I mean, you can. That's no secret. You can go on the site and
Yeah.
click around and figure that out. So I'm not
Hmm.
really revealing any secrets here, but we work with Mediavine. Not to say we haven't explored with others, but currently we work with Mediavine. We've been with them consistently on at least one of our properties because again, sometimes we'll test things on breaking muscle before we
Hmm.
apply them on BarBend because it's a smaller site. Gives us a little bit of a sandbox to play in sometimes. But we've been with Mediavine pretty consistently for a number of years.
Gotcha. And I mean, I see you guys have a very strong affiliate, like affiliate articles, and you have like partnerships as well. A lot of the people in the content side space, like even with James, like one of the things he's considering is after you rank for a certain keyword, let's just say best protein powder. Why didn't you go out, or have you explored in the past to go out and launch your own protein powder?
Yeah, there are a few. That's a great question. And there are a few reasons why. First off, we're not a products company. We are our product is content. Um,
Hmm.
when I was CEO of BarBend, I had to figure out, am I the right person to go out and build a supplements company? And the answer is no. I don't think that I'd be best at that, right? I think we got to the point where we were the best at producing strength content and strength related content. I don't think we're the best at, finding the right contract manufacturer and tweaking the formulations and marketing a protein powder. Um, it wasn't what we wanted to focus on. It wasn't our core competency. Could it have made more money in the long run? Maybe. I don't know, right? But that would have been building a business on very different fundamentals. And that's something we weren't interested in doing because I don't think BarBend's even done growing. I don't think BarBend is close to what it could be as just a content site, right? So I think that we had to have, there's only so much bandwidth you have. And the calculus was like, let's focus on growing to be the biggest and best content site we can be because we know that's profitable. We know that will create revenue. The other thing, too, is I think it can be risky to push your own products. I think that readers are smart. They understand that they can see that you might think you have the best product, but that might give them additional pause. Um, we don't want to be an e-commerce site, and there are reasons for that. We want reader perception. We don't want to be an e-commerce site for reader perception. At the same time, we also don't want to be an e-commerce site for SEO reasons, right? We don't want to be playing in that bucket. We want to be a content first site. So there are a few reasons. It's a great question. My answer ultimately is we just wanted to focus on producing the content, and a lot of that comes down to what was our leadership team's core competency, and it was content, not product.
Yeah, definitely spoken like someone with a background in journalism. It's great. I think it's a breath of fresh air for our readers because we're just straight capitalism in this podcast, and we'll do whatever it takes to push the top line. But that's good to hear.
Well,
And
I want.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just want to be clear. I think that there is a business case for that as well because if content's working, and if we did not see like the limit on scaling for content,
Mm-hmm.
right? I have an obligation. I had an obligation as CEO, and our entire leadership team. We had obligations to keep growing the business, produce a great return for our investors, and also foster a good environment for our employees. It takes a lot of money and a lot of energy to start a supplement company, as an example. You gave the example of protein powder or an equipment company or anything. That takes focus away from building on the base we'd already established with content, right? It costs time, it costs money, and it adds risk. It adds a lot of risk, right? Because you're not focusing that energy and capital on um, on your core business. So I want to say that I make an assessment, and maybe it is a journalist perspective, but at the same time, you know, I wasn't convinced it would make us more money. It might have, but I wasn't convinced it would. And it did add to our risk profile. It would have added to our risk profile as a business. So there is a bit of a capitalist bent there as far as our logic in not pursuing that.
Is PPC advertising something then, I guess, outside of having your own products, sending paid traffic to affiliate articles, anything like that? Is it something that you've tested at all, or something that you've maybe thought about, just so it's not so reliant on organic traffic?
No, not really. I mean, to be honest, the tiny bit of paid traffic we have done as tests has been to drive traction to our newsletters. Because we wanted to test out how people responded to specific newsletters and specific, subject lines, drips for those. These are not paid newsletters; these are free to subscribe, and we wanted to kind of see how different audiences reacted to that. So that's really where we focus in the paid realm. As far as PPC to affiliate content, no.
Gotcha. You touched on sponsorships briefly, and you said you had a dedicated team like focused on that. What does that sponsorship revenue stream look like? Do you have like an outbound sales team where you reach out to potential partners to sponsor certain events, a newsletter, podcast, et cetera? Or is it, just like a small team that takes in the inbound contact form fills who are interested in sponsoring?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say, I don't know if this is exactly the split, but it's probably close to 50-50. So obviously inbound is takes less time because you don't have to go out, you just answer emails or you like pick up the phone, right? So we do make it easy for potential inbound advertisers to work with us. I will say, and we've found some amazing partners through inbound who approach us because we're big enough to where people want our readers, they want our eyeballs. I will say you have to be very discriminating on that because there are a lot of spammy brands, especially in fitness, that we don't want to work with, that will approach us and they think that advertising on BarBend will lend them legitimacy and they might have some cash, but their products are not great and they kind of take a spammy approach or they take an inappropriate approach to marketing, right? They might use sex to sell a little bit too much, right? And we are a site that is for everyone. We have to be a little careful about that. So if someone's marketing is a little too extreme, even if their product is good, we have to be careful about that. And we have to be especially careful about that on inbound. A lot of the work we do, a lot of the work that team does is outbound, is approaching partners. We've worked with everyone from, someone making knee sleeves and supportive equipment, like, out of their garage, all the way to Fortune 500 companies when it comes to who we're directly working with on an advertising sense, in an advertising sense. And a lot of that is, it's probably an even-ish split right now between inbound and outbound, but obviously outbound takes the lion's share of that work and effort.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think the outbound sales thing is incredibly difficult and it's still something we're trying to crack here. But yeah, good to hear. And touching on the, there's a lot of brands out there right now, namely, friend of the pod, Kevin from Epic Gardening. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're very short form video based media company. But they've recently introduced like an e-commerce aspect, and they've been absolutely crushing it. It seems. Yeah, I thought that could be like an interesting move for BarBend. Not directly advertising things you rank for per se, but like stuff tangentially related to BarBend. Like, I don't know, fitness courses, which will step on James's shoes, but got to do what you got to do. But yeah,
BarBend would just be an affiliate, bro.
Yeah, no, like stuff like that. I'm sure you explored it, but have you explored like, I don't know, communities or courses, et cetera, et cetera?
We've talked about it. I think for us too, uh, there's so much. Like if I showed you the pages and pages of ideas that we wanted to explore,
Hmm.
we'd be here all day. The toughest part of my job as CEO for the 3 years prior to acquisition, because BarBend exited about 7 years after we were founded. The toughest part for me was figuring out what to kill your darlings, what not to explore, what to focus on. Now that we are part of a bigger company and we have more resources, more bandwidth, there's a lot more we do want to explore. And I think that we're just now coming out of the transition period, right? We've really just now come to the point where we're fully integrated into Pillar 4, and we're looking ahead and saying, okay, what is the game plan for a quarter from now, 2 quarters from now, 3, 4, 5 quarters from now? And there's some exciting stuff. And I've gotten to go back to the notes and say, oh, here's something we talked about years ago, but we just didn't have the bandwidth to do, right? And I think that is, things on the video end, things on launching in the realm of launching new podcasts, courses, community. These are all things that I think we're putting on the whiteboard to consider at this point. But we were, as a company that was not backed by venture capital and that was purely grown, for the last half of its pre-acquisition lifespan based on our own revenue and our own profitability, we had to be very, very picky about the new initiatives we dove
Yeah.
into. Very picky.
Yeah, it's quite risky, right? I think pretty sure if, for example, if you tried ecom and it failed, it might like absolutely ruin you or like
Yeah,
it would push you guys back a couple years type of thing.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah. And speaking of which, I think before hopping on this pod, I threw BarBend into Ahrefs, and there was a time, I believe it was 2020, where you guys were like the traffic was just up and to the right. You guys were mooning, but then I think you guys took like a 20-30% dip with from Google algorithm updates. What was that like at the time? Because I'm sure you guys were nonstop scaling. Do you remember that like clearly?
We weren't nonstop scaling, actually. I remember that very clearly because it was kind of during COVID. Everyone was stuck at home. We had to vacate our office, so I do remember that. And if you always want to be up and to the right, but I'm sure your audience knows this. The more you grow, the more the great search engine gods can take away, right? And oftentimes it is taking one step back, and then you have to try and figure out how to take 2 steps forward. It's not. The bigger you get, the less linear your progress is, and it stinks. It stinks to wake up and realize, oh, core algorithm update, we just took a hit, right? Because it impacts your bottom line. It
Mm-hmm.
impacts what you can do. It impacts the resources you can allocate. Uh, it is rough, right? And I think that understand that it doesn't get easier as you get bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're a 3-person team and you take a 10% hit, it's okay. Let's figure this out. But when you're a 20-person team and you take a 20% hit, you suddenly go, oh, I have to make payroll, right? Like, how much money do we have in the bank? Like, how does this impact our runway? How does this impact what we can invest in? It never goes away. No site always continues up and to the right, unless you're Google itself, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah.
Understanding that it's part of the game and building resiliency into your business as much as you can, and understanding that, everything could be going really well and you might take a 25% hit. That might just happen,
Mm.
and you might not be able to control when it happens. How do you build that into your game plan, and how do you build that into your business's outlook year in and year out? That's part of the toughest part of scaling a content business, as far as what I have learned and experienced.
What do you do with
Sure.
old news content, David? Do you, for example, stuff you maybe written 2017, 2018 on old events? Are you keeping that index, or are you no indexing those pages, deleting them, or they just remain on the
We're
site?
we're keeping that indexed. BarBend has kind of become the archive in many ways of results, right? So if you want results from then, like, we are kind of the publication of record for those, and those results are relevant, right?
Yeah.
We still get organic links from those. For example, say someone from 2017 has a career resurgence and they win another competition or they make a comeback. You know what I mean? Like people still look up that content and interact with it. It's also a record of athlete performance over their careers. Some of those are historic performances that people love revisiting, right? I'll give an example of, people like hearing about the first time Tia Claire Toomey won the CrossFit Games, right? They like hearing about that, and we covered that, right? And our question now is, she took a year off. She had a daughter. Is she going to come back and compete again? I would almost guarantee you, content from her earlier CrossFit Games wins will start getting more traffic because people are already interested in, is she making a comeback? Is she going to return to competition, right? So that content is still relevant. And I think as these sports become more popular, people do like to look back and see that record of what was that sport like and what was that competitive environment like in the here and now.
Yeah, it's funny because I have, when I acquired Lift Big Eat Big, there were some old athlete interviews on there. So I do you remember Pat Mendes, the weightlifter?
I do remember Pat Mendes.
Yeah. So there was an interview with Pat Mendes on the site, and I think end of last year he went on a dating show. So I got links from news sites to his interview on the site about him being on this dating show and how he was a weightlifter. So yeah, it's interesting. Like just old content like that, people tend to link back to when journalists are trying to find something about these people. There seems to be a similar thing there.
That's a great example, and one I haven't personally encountered, but now I need to look back. I don't think we have any content on Pat Mendes, but I think I need to look. I think he was kind of before BarBend's time, right? But I could look back and see. Yeah,
for sure. And I know you have a partnership with USA Weightlifting. I was just at the Nationals last week at the Weightlifting Nationals, and I didn't see any BarBend logo on the thing there. And I was just looking now, I didn't see any coverage from BarBend on the Nationals. Are you guys still partnered with USA Weightlifting and doing the news there?
Oh yeah, for sure. And there is coverage of we did cover.
Oh, there is
national. Yeah,
okay.
we did cover national. So you'll probably see some more of that drip out this week. Afterward. So we still work with USA Weightlifting. I wasn't there personally. There were BarBend banners actually. You might not have seen them.
Come on, Jim.
We do have visible presence there. It's a big multi-platform venue. Sometimes you're locked in. You had athletes there, like you're locked in. So we still work very closely with USA Weightlifting. I think that it's funny because people will say like, "Oh, I didn't see BarBend there." Oftentimes that's just because I'm not at competitions and I'm very visible and loud at competitions. So I didn't go to nationals this year, right? But like I went to AO finals in December, and a few people were like, "Oh, I saw BarBend everywhere." I think just because they heard me and saw me there, right? So I can be a bit of a visible presence, maybe a bit of an annoying presence too. So, that's we still work with them. We still love our relationship with USA Weightlifting. They're fantastic folks.
Cool. David, I hope you don't mind me just like asking about all the business aspects. But yeah, just do what you've been doing. Like for example, just say you can't speak on certain topics. But another thing I wanted to ask about was a lot of the people in our community, they don't, well, me as well, me included, is we don't know when to take profits, when to sell. I'm sure many people have approached BarBend in the past to sell your business. What made you say yes this time? And what made you say no in the past?
That's a great question. The biggest reason we've said no in the past, and we did have inbound interest in selling BarBend dating back years. I don't know exactly when it started, but definitely existed. That's a great question. I'm happy to talk about it. The biggest reason you would say no is the money's not right. The number's not right, right? Biggest reason. And it's a reason we have said no. Like, nope, that's not what we think the business is worth. Or, and this is related, it comes at a time when, okay, maybe that is what the business is worth now, but we see a growth trajectory. and we want to get to a certain point, right? We want to grow this to a certain point before we actually seriously entertain acquisition offers. Those are completely legitimate reasons, right? And ones that were relevant and real for me. The other thing is, we wanted a good outcome, like I said, for investors and employees. And there are a lot of folks in the internet space who wanted BarBend and didn't necessarily want our team, right? And that's not just me saying, oh, that's not me just being a bleeding heart and caring for our team. I do care for our team. But I wanted to keep working at BarBend. I still wanted a job, right? Like, I love working at BarBend, right? I didn't want to step away entirely. So there are some selfish reasons there. And ultimately, we had to find the right home for it for the team, but also the right outcome for our investors. And when Pillar 4 came knocking, it's a company we have a relationship with. Todd, who is the CEO of Pillar 4, is someone I greatly admire in the content space and have for a long time. And I think that the way they treat folks, the way they treat their teams is something I've always admired since I've been aware of them as a company. And it also passed this bar that I didn't know I had. Is it a place I'd be excited to work? And the answer was yes. And I hadn't really thought about that, right? I hadn't really thought about that with the other inbound offers we got. And then I was like, oh, I actually would be excited to work there, right? So that certainly helped. Kind of all those green flags allowed us to enter into negotiations. And then I do want to give a shout out to Pillar 4's team, their finance team, their human resources team, all of the above, because due diligence is never easy for a business that has scaled and is large. But my admiration for them only grew during the due diligence process, because it is a bit of a slog, right? You're working together to get all this stuff figured out, and they really showed up in a big way.
Yeah, sounds like they were really professional. Yeah, well, first off, yeah, congrats on the sale. I'm sure you're very happy with Pillar 4. They seem like a great company. I've seen some of the sites in their portfolio. It looks insane. And I think another question probably a lot of our audience is having right now is, with 3 co-founders, with investors, how did you pay yourself? Is it just like a salary? Was there like an upside bonus that you've priced in? For example, did you pay out dividends during the time, the 6 years that you guys were operational? What did that look like? What did the comp look like?
Great question. I received a salary. I received a salary as an executive. Our investors did have preferred shares, so they got they got they were at the top of the waterfall, so to speak, and they had some other preferred terms that I can't talk about specifically, but like that made the deal really good. Sweetened it for them and really rewarded them for believing in the company, and those were terms that we had agreed upon with them when we were raising. But yeah, the boring answer is I received the salary, and
that's it.
That's
I think
basically how it worked.
Yeah. Did you, when you raised money with and handing out preferred shares, we've seen a lot of, in the recent times, you've seen a lot of companies who raise like preferred shares via VC completely get wrecked, where the founders didn't get anything at the end. Like, for example, Jasper AI the founders will never get a single dollar out of that company ever again. Did you see that as a risk, or were you just so confident and you had such like strong conviction in the company that wasn't going to be the result at the time?
Well, we raised such that we did not give up control of the company.
Yes.
Right. We still controlled our own board. We named our board seats. We still controlled our own destiny. No one was telling us a specific way to do business, and I love our investors, and some of them were very strategic and gave us a lot of great counsel over the years, but they were not deciding how we operated as a company. And we did not. We were very happy with how we structured the preferred shares, such that our investors were rewarded. But I do want to be clear here: all three of our founders, including myself, also invested in the preferred in that round, right? So we also saw, we also got to take advantage of those terms, right? Like I was a co-founder of BarBend, CEO of BarBend, and also an investor in BarBend.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's worth noting, like, everything went extremely well with your company. So I think there was companies in Silicon Valley, let's just say, they raised, I don't know, 100 million at 1 billion valuation, and now they're at $50 million valuation. And with the preferred shares, and if they ever exit for, let's say, 50, the co-founders don't get anything in that scenario, exactly. Right? Yeah. So I guess you never thought that the company would be worth less than 800K at any time ever again, right?
That was the goal, to not have it be worth less than that. And look, entrepreneurship is a risk. You can't predict with 100% certainty what will happen. But like I said, I think the best thing that happened to us is that we were not able to raise venture capital.
Yeah.
And it led us down a path of focusing on profitability and revenue, and not trying to just pump up a valuation. Right? I didn't care. I didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about the valuation of BarBend until the company sold.
That's good. I mean, you wouldn't have gone that with VCs, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. I mean, that's a good way to approach it. That's for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Apologies for just hounding you with these questions. I think it's very interesting how you approached this company. It's very, very different from the other people in this industry. But yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, we had our own path, and I think a lot of it's. I want to say it's all my master plan. A lot of it was luck, right? There's an element of luck here. I recognize that, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for how luck broke in our favor over the years.
Yeah, was there a point in time that like BarBend gave you sleepless nights? Because I'm guessing a majority of your, like, a percentage of your net worth is always tied up in BarBend. Before this, these Google updates might have been like earth shattering.
I mean, Google updates, the pandemic. I mean, look, I'm a little calmer now. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be honest with you all and the listeners. Post acquisition, I spent a lot of time in therapy to try and calm the heck down, because I am not a very chill person. I'm trying to have that air right now, but I worry a lot. Like I worry quite a bit. Being CEO of BarBend definitely took a toll on me over the years. And right now, as I am in a new role, and still with the company, but a different role, a slightly less demanding role, if I'm being honest, I'm trying to recalibrate myself. And actually talking about this stuff with smart folks like yourselves is really useful for me. The burnout was real. The stress was real. I'm trying to, I feel like I kind of came out of a little bit of a metamorphosis phase right now, in that I'm like, oh, that's how I lived for a number of years. I don't really want to do that again right now. Let's replace that stress and anxiety with gratitude. And that's what I'm gradually trying to do right now. So I'm a much friendlier person on this interview than I would have been a year ago. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I think we all start podcasts because we don't want to go to therapy. So I'm
doing both right now. So let's, you call it a win-win.
Yeah. I think before we wrap up, I think the listeners also, after a big exit, what are you doing with your money? Like, are you index funds and chill, bonds and chill, real estate and chill, mix of all of them? What are you thinking?
I think it's a mix. I bought some whiskey I really wanted. That's my stupid purchase. I live in Brooklyn, so, and I like not having a car, so there was no big car purchase. Did some investing, a lot of T-bills. I'm
T-bills and
boring.
chill. Okay.
I'm boring. Like I don't like you like I like hosting, and I don't even travel that much. I'm kind of a homebody at this point. So like people are like, "What trip are you taking?" And I was like, "I went to New Jersey." Woohoo! I saw some family in New
Yeah.
Jersey. How exciting, kind of thing. Um, you know, the other thing I'll say is the work did not end when we signed the paperwork. The transition period has been significant. Um, we owed it to ourselves as executives and founders to make that transition period as easy as possible for our team. So, like, we sign on the dotted line, the deal happens, we're part of Pillar 4, money gets wired, great. There's still a lot of work to do. There were months of, we're just now kind of coming to the end of the transition period. And it was fun work, actually. It wasn't like terrible, but there was a lot that came up, right? Like I felt like I was always on call because it's like, oh, this transition thing, this bank account needs to be relinked, this credit card needs to be updated, this HR thing needs to be updated. People have new enrollment in insurance. It was a lot of stuff, and I actually enjoyed it. I really did, but it was just kind of this constant flow of things. So I haven't had a lot of time to like plan, is what I'll say.
Got it. Wow. I mean, if you enjoyed it, man, you gotta. Something's wrong there. Something's off there, man. I think.
Yeah, I'm not saying. Yeah, don't necessarily be like me. I'm not saying I'm right.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think the transitional period is also tough. Due diligence. I think you understated that. It's like absolute hell, and I'm sure it took months, right? Like, yeah. It was absolute hell. Well, yeah. David, really appreciate you coming on today. Where can the audience find you? Like, where do you want people?
Yeah, check out BarBend and check out Breaking Muscle. Obviously, me personally, I'm at David Thomas Tao. That's David Thomas TAO on Instagram, and at D_Tao D_TAO on Twitter. So give me a holler.
I'd highly recommend anyone also read David's Medium post on that BarBend exit. What did they search? Just David Tao BarBend Medium or something like that?
Yeah, or if you go to Instagram or my Twitter profile, they're pinned on both of those, so you can check out that link. And yeah, that's like I really kind of poured my heart and soul into the BarBend story, and I know James has read it. And if y'all want to like get into the real nitty gritty on the timeline and some more specifics, I put most of it, not all of it, but I put most of it out there in that post.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll link everything down in the description, guys. Check it out. All right. Thanks, David.